Un saludo a todos, buenos días, buenas tardes. Es un placer poder dar inicio a esta sesión. Como siempre, iniciamos cada bloque de clases con una charla, un keynote de una personalidad destacada y sobre temas de gran interés. Hoy tenemos la fortuna de tener con nosotros a Fabian Eggers, que es profesor de Marketing y Entrepreneurship en el Menlo College. Inmediatamente vamos a presentarlo y vamos a dar paso a la sesión. Eh, yo como Provost de Westfield tengo el placer de poder iniciar las sesiones y voy a dar paso a Rafael de Cárdenas. Rafael es Chief Academic Officer en el grupo Prisma y es el director de Curriculum Content Development and Innovation en Westfield. Buenas tardes, Rafa. ¿Cómo estás? Adelante.
Muy buenas tardes, Ignacio, y buenos días o tardes, según estéis los demás. Muchas gracias por la introducción, Ignacio, y es un placer estar aquí hoy. Voy a pasar pronto al inglés, porque el ponente que tenemos hoy va a desarrollar su sesión en inglés. Como recordamos en estas sesiones, tenéis abajo un icono con la bola del mundo. Los que queráis seguir la sesión en español podéis dar ahí a español, y los que queráis seguir la sesión en inglés pues podéis no hacer nada y directamente escucharéis a Fabian su exposición. Paso ya al inglés en atención a nuestro ponente. Un gusto estar con vosotros hoy, como siempre. Hello, Fabian. Let me briefly introduce you to the students so that, of course, they know who you are. They have plenty of information that I gave them about yourself. But just briefly, your education, it's very interesting because it's something that happened between two continents, Europe and America, the United States. You have your degrees in universities in Europe, in Germany, Lüneburg and Hamburg, your MBA. And now you are teaching and you are doing research at Menlo College, an institution that we consider a friend of Westfield Business School. And actually there, as Ignacio said, you are professor of marketing and entrepreneurship there. And we know also that before you were professor at San Jose State University, another fantastic school in California, very close to Menlo College and very close to Menlo itself. And we know that your research focuses mostly on entrepreneurial marketing and innovation management as drivers of strategic marketing decisions. Actually, all the topics that are related to these concepts are indeed very interesting for all of us, particularly in this moment in time with this ever-changing, at a very fast-paced world. And also your role as global research in the director of the Global Research Conference of Marketing and Entrepreneurship, I think is quite interesting for us all. Let me tell you, students, also that Fabian is a speaker in our Silicon Valley, San Francisco Immersion Weeks. Actually, he started last year with a session that was an opening session of the week, and Fabian will be with us as well. I'm very happy to announce in October for those of you who will be in San Francisco Silicon Valley Week, end of October. So, and I hope this collaboration continues over and over. Fabian, vielen Dank. Wirklich eine Ehre für uns hier. And thank you for being here and for inspiring us and also for enlightening us about a topic that we consider that is very, very cutting edge and also crucial for all our businesses. Thank you, Fabian.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rafa, for the nice introduction. Hello, everyone. So I'm Fabian Eggers. My Spanish is a little rusty, therefore I have to do this in English. Also, a quick announcement. I am here in, well, I'm actually not in Silicon Valley right now. I'm very close to Silicon Valley, in Santa Cruz, California. And funny enough, I have some internet problems. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. But recently we had some intermittent, very short outages with our internet connection. So if that happens, I hope it doesn't, but if it happens, I have not left the meeting. I just got cut out and I will be right back. Again, I don't hope it happens. If it does, I apologize in advance. Anyway, let's get started. So again, thanks so much for having me. And I would really like to talk a little bit about this topic here. By the way, if you have any, I will allow for questions in between. We definitely should have enough time for questions at the end. If you have any questions, meanwhile I'm talking, please use the chat. You ask questions, and I'm more than happy to answer those. Okay. So, and I also try to make this a little bit interactive. So let's see how that goes. But anyway, let's just get started. So we are don't have too much time for this. So I just open this up. I hope you can all see my screen. Topic is dealing with market uncertainties, effectuation. Okay, so little bit of an agenda. Want to talk about what's strategic planning, what's causation. This is really an approach that has been used or is used in business schools all over the world, right? So everything is about strategic management, strategic planning, etc., etc. But we will see that this is not always a very good idea. So there is a different approach, surprise, called effectuation. And I would like to talk about what that is and how you can use it in your businesses. And then towards the end, I like to talk about some um, um, other topics that are informing effectuation, which is entrepreneurial expertise and the existence of a no strategy logic. Okay, look, let's get started. So this, don't be scared. I don't want to turn you off because of this, but I just wanted to bring this up. So this is a diagram I am using in my strategic management class. And you might have seen something like this. This is all about the concept of strategic planning. As I just mentioned, business students around the world, undergraduate or graduate, they learn this stuff, which means whenever you want to do something in a business, you always start with an objective. You always start with a goal. And the goal is future oriented. You know, the goal is in the future. You want to achieve something. Yeah, then you set out a strategy to make that happen. You know, the strategy sets you on a general path towards reaching that goal. And then, well, then you start doing stuff, right? Then these are your tactics. This is then stuff that informs your strategy to reach your goals. Example, you are all here in this class because, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to get a graduate college degree, right? So that's your objective that is geared towards the future. So very soon, sooner or later, you want to get a graduate degree, right? So what degree do you want to get? Well, it's a degree from Westfield, maybe an MBA, executive MBA, something like that, right? So that's your overall strategy. Go to Westfield, get a graduate degree, a business graduate degree from that school, and then you make it happen. Okay. Another quick example, you are maybe the product manager of an ice cream company, Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And your goal is to increase sales for the next year by 5%. Well, your strategy could be to launch a new product within the next year to reach your objective, and then you make it happen, right? You create the product, you create marketing for the product, etc., etc., etc. So again, so this is strategic planning, right? A goal in the future, you create a strategy and you make the strategy work. So in the late 90s, a colleague of mine, Sarah Sarasvati, that's her, that's me, long time ago. I don't know why I'm the only one having a big wine glass in my hand. Anyway, it doesn't matter, right? So this is me, my colleagues, and Sarah Sarasvati. Sarah Sarasvati in the 90s wrote a dissertation, and she wanted to analyze the decision-making logics of entrepreneurs. And she wanted to analyze, I just go back to the previous one here, she wanted to analyze how entrepreneurs are using this approach, this strategic planning approach. And what she found was entrepreneurs are not using this approach at all. Nobody's using it, right? So, which already is kind of interesting, because we are teaching this in business schools, and at least in the entrepreneurship world, nobody's applying this approach. Zero, no one. And then she asked herself, why is that? Why is nobody doing this? And she figured the major reason why this doesn't apply to entrepreneurs is uncertainty. So if you look at this, again, I go back to the slide. If you look at this approach, this works very well if there are very low uncertainties in the surrounding market. Coming back to my graduation example, well, why can you set this goal of graduating with a degree, let's say, in 1 year? You can do that because there's a very clear path laid out for you of how to make that happen, right? So there are certain classes that you need to take. There are maybe advisors at Westfield that tell you how to do it. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of students who have done this before. So if you just do what everyone else has done, and if you follow the guidance you get from all, and the information you have, guess what? You will reach that goal. So in my graduation graduation planning example, surrounding uncertainties are low. There's almost no uncertainty. I mean, there can always be another pandemic. I hope not, but stuff like that throw a curveball into that plan. But typically, it's very certain, right? There's not much stuff that could interfere with your plan. With my ice cream example, if you are the marketing manager of Ben & Jerry's ice cream and you should write a marketing plan for next year, that's pretty easy to do. Why? Because Ben & Jerry's as a company has been around for decades. They have established customers. They have established suppliers. They have established competitors. They have all the sales numbers from all the previous years. So based on all of this information, it's relatively easy to make a plan that is geared towards the future. So, however, if uncertainty in the surrounding markets is high, planning doesn't work. Okay, so that's one of the major outcomes out of her dissertation. I don't know why she's the only one who doesn't smile. Normally she smiles, doesn't matter. And she figured that entrepreneurs who don't use this approach use an approach called effectuation. And that's what I want to talk about in the next couple of minutes. So effectuation is a decision logic, a way to approach highly uncertain markets and uncertain environments. And I mean, that's what entrepreneurs have to deal with all the time, right? If you start a new company, Well, the company is new. The product you are going to invent or going to market is new. You don't have any customers. So, you know, setting a goal towards the future and working towards that goal is completely useless. What I also tell my students is that if you have a highly innovative business idea, writing a business plan right from the start is completely useless too. Doesn't make any sense, right? Because again, you cannot plan. And just one other thing before I move on. If you're now sitting in this webinar and saying, well, I don't want to have anything to do with entrepreneurship, that's okay, right? So this is an approach that emerged out of entrepreneurial research, but is now used in all kinds of situations where companies deal with market uncertainties. And as Rafa said before, nowadays in today's world, there are so many uncertainties surrounding us that, you know, well, I'm setting a goal and in 5 years I'm going to do this and that, oftentimes doesn't work anymore. Okay, so that's effectuation. Effectuation can best be discussed or explained on the basis of 5 so-called principles. The first principle of effectuation is called bird in hand. And I want to explain this on the basis of an example. So example is preparing a meal. You know, depending on where you are, it's well, already afternoon on the East Coast. Maybe you are thinking of what to have today for dinner. And one way to do this is to, guess what? Plan your dinner. Right? So if you plan your dinner, you set out with, guess what? With a goal. The goal is what you want to eat. And I don't know, maybe you want to do whatever. Want to have Caesar salad tonight. I don't know. Just one idea, right? That's your plan. That's your goal. I want to eat Caesar salad tonight for dinner. And what do you do next? You say, okay, if I want to eat Caesar salad, I probably have to get some ingredients. Maybe and maybe you have to go grocery shopping. You have to get the lettuce. You have to get the dressing, and maybe if you want to eat it with chicken, you need some chicken. Then you go back home, get the recipe out, make the dinner, right? That's the planned approach of making dinner. So the effectual approach, so the question is, you know, is there another way to make dinner, right? If you don't plan. And the other way would be to just go home, look into your kitchen, look into your fridge, and see what you have. And make something out of the stuff you already have in your kitchen, in your fridge, in your pantry, wherever, right? And that is called bird in hand. Bird in hand means you're not setting a goal and work towards the goal. It rather means you look into what are the resources or means that you already have available. Again, when it comes to my cooking example is, what do I have at home? And I just make something out of the stuff I have at home. If you are in your business, look at who you are, what you know, and whom you know. You know, what am I good at? Do I have any specific experiences from a previous job? And do I have specific interests? Do I know specific people that I can work with? And you use these already available resources to create something. So that is called bird in hand, right? You work with the bird that is already in your hand. Versus planning, you know, in planning, you're always focusing on your goal. And that is interesting, I think, because this already helps you to navigate an uncertain environment. Because if you only work with the things you already possess, the things that you already have, there's no uncertainty whatsoever. There's zero uncertainty because you already have that stuff. Versus, again, think about it, if you plan, right? It's like, oh yeah, Caesar salad. I haven't had Caesar salad in such a long time, right? But what could happen is you go to the supermarket is closed, or it's open, but they ran out of Caesar's dressing. So there's an inherent chance that you don't get the resources you need to achieve your goal. Okay, hope that makes sense. If not, scream, ask questions, use the chat, etc. But this is the first principle in effectuation. Work with what you already have and don't worry about stuff that you need to get to make something work. That's planning. Effectuation is work with the stuff you already have. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is called affordable loss. So what do you do with these available resources? Well, this is kind of a fancy way of getting across what I'm about to say. These available resources, you're not using all of them and try and invest them all into one strategy, as in planning. You don't do that. Instead, you start running small experiments. Maybe with your expertise, maybe with the people you test, if you're on the right track. Maybe you have a product idea. What you don't do in effectuation is you make the entire product, invest all your resources, all your time. Maybe you get extra funding from investors, only to figure out that it doesn't work. Instead, you run small experiments to see if you're on the right track or not, right? So what it says here, and you do that, you only invest as many resources. So resources can be your time, can be your money, can be other resources. You only invest as many resources that you can afford to lose. Meaning, well, an experiment can go wrong. Maybe nobody wants to have that stuff. But if that's the case, fine, you learn something from your mistake, and you do it better next time. So effectuators limit risk by understanding what they can afford to lose at each step, instead of seeking large all or nothing opportunities. Again, in planning, I typically seek large all or nothing opportunities. I am, let's say, you can guess I'm hungry. I want to open a restaurant, and in planning, I go all in. I make a plan based on my goal to open a, let's say, German restaurant in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I plan it all out. I write a business plan. I get all the money and I open the restaurant. And I bet all my money. I bet all my resources on this one place. And if it does work, I'm done. In affordable loss, I am running experiments. Maybe I am starting to maybe just cook. Maybe the dishes I like to serve at that place. Maybe I just start cooking that stuff for my friends and get some feedback. Maybe I get a stand at a farmer's market where I sell my food. Maybe I have a food truck to figure out if people are really into this, etc., etc. So again, running different experiments to see if what I'm trying to do is actually making sense or not. So I'm inviting the surprise factor. I'm actually fine with failing. So you probably heard this from entrepreneurship. Fail fast. If you have to fail, you have to fail fast. Learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, to do it better the next time. example is, well, create prototypes. Don't make the entire product only to figure out that it doesn't work. Make a very easy, quick and easy, dirty prototype that you can get in front of people to get their feedback. Marketing strategies nowadays, digital marketing strategies. Or, well, I shouldn't say strategy in this case, but digital marketing approaches often use affordable loss. Maybe you're thinking of running an advertising campaign on Instagram. Do you spend $100,000 right from the get-go only to figure out it doesn't work? No. You're probably spending $100 on an advertising campaign to see if there's any traction, right? If there is, nice, put more money behind it. If there's not, try to figure out why it didn't work and do it better the next time. So affordable loss is another powerful principle in effectuation to navigate uncertain environments. You don't know what the future brings. You have no idea if anybody wants to have that product. You don't know if that communication approach, that advertising approach is useful. You don't know that. So by running small experiments and learning from your mistakes, you basically get more light into this otherwise dark room, right? Into this uncertain environment. So, so a second principle to navigate in uncertain environments, and what Saraswati figured out, a good way that entrepreneurs use to, start their companies. So closely connected with that is the third principle called lemonade. Lemonade means, so it's kind of, from this English saying, if someone throws lemons at you, make lemonade, right? If you experience negativity, if something goes wrong, don't be all depressed. Use that as an opportunity to learn, right? Invite the surprise factor. That's part of effectuation, right? Maybe by talking to customers, they point you to something that you haven't even considered. Maybe actually your customers have an even better idea of how to make that product than you had in the first place. So if something doesn't go according to your plan, appreciate it. So interpret bad news and surprises as potential clues to create new markets, right? So in effectuation, surprise is good since it creates new opportunities. Again, talking to a customer might give you another clue of how to make that what you wanted to do even better. In causation, in planning, surprise is bad. You don't want to be surprised. You wrote your plan, you wrote your business plan, and you pray that there will be no surprises along the way. You just wanted to work out as you planned. So planning aims at eliminating surprises. Effectuation invites surprises. And again, this is very closely related to affordable loss. Affordable loss means, well, to some extent, you want to be surprised. Maybe there's something you figure out that is even better than the stuff you planned in the first place. Okay, so that's the third principle. Fourth principle is called Crazy Quilt. It basically means you really emphasize partnerships, strategic alliances. By the way, that's one approach to get more resources. What I said before, let's go back here all the way. Bird in hand is whom I know, whom I know. Maybe there are other people in this market that I can work with that provide me with additional means, additional resources that I can work with, which then could also help me eliminate uncertainty, as I talked about before, right? So effectuators build partnerships with, other companies, maybe even competitors. Why not? So again, which reduces uncertainty. In contrast, strategic planning or causation, it's all about competitive analysis. So if you follow the classic strategic management approach, particularly from the 1980s, what they say is every outsider is bad. Every outsider is an enemy. Everyone wants to steal your ideas. They want to do you harm, right? So in this case, it means protect what you have. Effectuation is the opposite. Says, well, if there's somebody else, maybe there's another startup doing the same stuff. Maybe you should still work together to conquer and create the market. Why not? So, last principle is called pilot in the plane. And that means um, if you use all these other principles, if you work with your available resources, right? If you focus on what you already have, maybe you can enhance that through partnerships. If you do that, if you then use these resources to navigate uncertain environments by running a lot of experiments, only always investing as many resources as you can afford to lose. And if something doesn't go according to plan, you interpret that as something positive, right? You actually create your own future. So an effectual worldview is rooted in the belief that the future is neither found nor predicted, but rather made. Okay, so put differently, if you just work in the here and now with what you have and do what I just said, you will create your own future, right? So example, I could plan, but maybe I can plan a career move, right? Let's say in 5 years, I want to have that specific job. And that's a goal, right? That's a plan. And then you make a plan. It's like, if I want to be at that position in 5 years, what are the things I need to do to make that happen? Again, that is planning. That is causation. In effectuation, you would just say, well, I'm really good at this. I know all these different people. Maybe I can experiment with different things that I really like to do. And eventually, something positive will come out of this. Maybe I get to that specific position, or I turn into something else. Who cares, right? So that's what effectuation aims to do. Again, in contrast, causation rests on a logic of foresight. That is, to the extent that people can predict the future, they can control it. Well, first of all, you cannot predict the future, but in less uncertain environments, you probably can do that, right? Kind of. You think you can probably predict the future, so you can control it, right? However, effectuation rests on a logic of non-predictive control, right? That is, to the extent that people can control the future, they do not need to predict it. Again, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, who I'm going to be in 5 years. But if I work with effectual principles, well, I will turn out just fine in the next couple of years. Okay, so want to do a quick stop. Actually, I have a question here from Juan Carlos in the chat. Question regarding the uncertainty in the market. Considering that uncertainty creates noise, especially because those noises come from multiple sources such as news, events, and governments, friends, how should we manage noises so they do not impact strategic planning process, especially when many of these noises are potential or unpredictable future events? True. I mean, there's always noise, right? The thing is, um, well, the more noise there is, I would argue, and Juan Carlos, what you wrote there, I mean, noise creates uncertainty, right? Maybe a lot of people tell you a lot of different things, you know. You don't know what's going to happen with the world economy, with elections, etc., etc. So if there is all this noise, meaning if there is a lot of uncertainty, again, I would not do strategic planning, right? So do the opposite. Do effectuation. So the more the future is unpredictable, it doesn't make too much sense to make long-term plans that go into the future, right? I hope I understood your question correctly. So instead, you know, resort to effectuation principles. You know, don't make a plan. You know, try to work with available resources, right? Run these experiments, etc., etc. I hope that somehow answers the question. If not, please ask a follow-up question. Uh, yeah. So okay. So one, I guess I don't need marketing surveys into infatuation. I budget a loss and go with my experiment. Um, yes. Um, uh, Surveys are, I mean, you can do, you can do surveys, but what's more useful is one-on-one customer interaction in that case. You know, you know, I mean, if you run, if I come back to my one example of a social media ad, you know, if you use affordable loss there, you don't necessarily survey your participants, but you get all the data from Instagram, right? You get all the data from analytics tools that you can definitely implement. Um, a lot of this, a lot of experimentation also can also rest on one-on-one customer interaction. You know, maybe talk to them, maybe get together with them, maybe see their reaction towards your prototype, etc. But I mean, I'm not saying that surveys are not useful in effectual principles. You know, if you wanna measure how a larger group of people reacts to an idea, you can do that. Um, Also, when you say I budget a loss, you could do that. I mean, affordable loss doesn't necessarily mean that you lose money, but it means that you can lose money or resources, right? So meaning, if you run a survey, you have to at least design it in a way that, I mean, I'm exaggerating this right now, but if you have a survey that only asks, do you like this product? Yes, no, and everybody says no, then you don't learn anything. You just learn that nobody likes it. But if you design the survey in a way that people can actually give you open-ended feedback in terms of what they would like to see improved, well, yes, then you learn something, right? So again, always set up these experiments so that they provide the room for you to learn. That's how I would approach this. I hope that helps. If not, let me know, right? Maria, in this moment, what is more important, identifying the new opportunities or generating value to already established ideas? Well, this is, I guess this is a typical business school answer, which is it depends. So it depends on where you are, right? I mean, um, um, so where are we now? So now it can be both, right? Maybe again, maybe in your business you already have ideas that you want to test through affordable loss. or you are at a stage where there's a need for an innovation, right? So both is true, right? It depends on where your company is, where you are at this moment. But effectuation is actually pretty good at both, right? If uncertainties are high. So I think what I also need to stress again is that the strategic planning approach is not completely useless, right? Don't get me wrong. It's very useful in less uncertain situations. But yeah, if but again, new opportunities typically create uncertainty, right? I think that's another way to approach this. If it's a new opportunity, it might be more uncertain than potentially an already established idea. So maybe effectuation is not the best approach if something is already established. Maybe planning is the way to go, right? So what I'm not saying is that everything we taught you so far in strategic management is useless. It's very useful, but you just have to figure out in what situation you are in. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense. Do you think effectuation can be implemented in big companies and organizations besides the innovation idea? Yeah, totally. Right? It can. It should. I would say. To some extent, it's also a resource. It can be almost a resource saving approach. Run a lot of small experiments with stuff you already have. You know, um, um, can be very useful in large organizations, and in fact, that's what large organizations nowadays do. Also, they want to be more entrepreneurial. That's also what I always teach my students. Entrepreneurship doesn't mean we only talk about startups. It's nowadays very much about how to make large organizations more entrepreneurial, how to make them more flexible, more innovative, more nimble. And effectuation principles can do that. So yeah. Um, uh, I guess that hopefully, if not, let me know. Hopefully answers the question. I think we must have a mix of both effectuation and causation. Yeah, very good. Very good. Vladimir, what you say is very important. That's what I also wanted to approach on my last couple of slides. I hope I have time to go through them. If you research what companies do, you will see that in pretty much every case, they always use a mix of different principles. So what this not is it's not that you just say, well, you either do effectuation or you do causation. It's always a mix of different principles. Let me actually, well, I will get back to that in a second, but that's very important. It depends on the environment. And again, you can mix different principles together. Uncertainty can keep us alert. Do these principles suggest a little more recommendation to new scenarios? Yes, absolutely. Effectuation is a good way to deal with uncertain scenarios, right? Exactly. So provides a better way to deal with that. And actually, that's a good point there. And it keeps you alert. That's very important there as well. And then in what way can client interaction be utilized to make improvements in the legal service? Could you please help me with a couple of examples? I've greatly enjoyed this. Okay. Okay. Legal service. Okay. Um, I'm not I'm not too much of an expert in that. Um, but again, maybe if it comes to creating new products, dealing with clients, it could be a way to deal with their needs and wants. Um, I will also share my email. So, Yael, if you want to reach out to me later and explain more what you mean, I'm more than happy to make that happen. Because I think I need a little bit more context. Pilot in the plane is to new business and true, yeah. So it yeah, and again, a pilot in the plane is what you also have to understand is pilot in the plane is an approach that combines all the other principles, right? So that's kind of that puts all the other principles together. So it's basically the major principle in effectuation. So yes, within the principle of acceptable loss combined with the concept of risk assessment, what tools could you recommend to control this principle and determine what loss is acceptable? Well, okay, a lot of good questions. I mean, what loss is acceptable depends on the business. You know, how much time do you have to spend on something? How much money do you have to spend on something? So that's really a subjective a question, how much you can afford to lose. Um, um, and again, this is up to your creativity, right? So what tools you could recommend. I mean, lots of digital marketing tools can nowadays be used to make that happen, right? To run these small experiments. And of course, it depends on what you want to test. You want to test a price, you know? Do you want to test price setting? Do you want to test marketing communication? Do you want to test how much people appreciate a product or a prototype for that product? So there's all kinds of different ways, and lots of those nowadays are digital tools. Another way to make that work is just by talking to people, you know. So ask them, ask them open-ended questions, ask for, feedback, serious, honest feedback on your plans. Just this is always a good step. Always get close to, for example, if it's a customer idea, customer related idea, always be close to your customers. Go out, bring them in, go out, talk to them, do little focus groups, get their idea, tell them what you're about to do and get their feedback. That's another way of an experiment, just talking to people. Um, uh, do you have an example of someone who has used this tool very applicable to my industry? Janet, well, I don't have this very specific, but if you think about it, a lot of people nowadays do that implicitly. They already do that, but they just don't know that they're doing it. So also something I briefly wanted to show you in a second. Again, what Sarah Saraswati figured in her interview, in her dissertation, is that pretty much every entrepreneur does that. So it's a way to run an entrepreneurial business is to use effectuation principles. But I'm more than happy to dig into that deeper with specific examples. But so that I think that's interesting there. Effectuation is similar to use the concept of heuristics or shortcuts to solve problem solutions. It's not necessarily something to shortcut anything, right? So, and I think I have to show you this one slide in a very short moment. It's just a different way to solve a problem. In fact, using effectual principles doesn't necessarily mean you do anything faster than in planning. You just approach it differently, right? Again, running these experiments can take quite a bit of time. Good point there. I wouldn't say it's necessarily something to speed up the process. It's just something to approach something differently, if that makes sense. And then are these principles related to business, software development, and security? Yes, I mean they're basically, it's kind of an unsatisfactory answer potentially, but they're pretty much related to everything, right? So you can pretty much use them in all kinds of ways. I mean, you can, as I just said, you could use them in your career planning. You can use that in I don't know, when making a new product. It can be used in marketing, anywhere, right? It's again, if the future is greatly uncertain, again, and it's a decision logic, right? Um, um, uh, Applying that decision logic helps you to navigate uncertain environments, no matter what you do, right? And then how much of your strategy should be based on forecasting versus adapting to opportunities as they arise? Good point. Also depends on, well, the level of perceived uncertainty. So if, well, I can forecast in relatively certain environments. As I said earlier, if I know what I'm doing, if I've done this before, if other people have done this before, then a forecast is probably a good idea. If nobody has done this before, if I have no clue what I'm doing, then effectuation is the better way of dealing stuff, right? Super. So we have 7 minutes left. Okay, let me just rush through the last couple of slides. By the way, I'm more than happy to share them if I can send them to Rafa or so if you want to have those. Let me just quickly look at two different things that relate to what you just asked, and I really appreciate these really, really good questions. One thing I wanted to very briefly talk about is the concept of entrepreneurial expertise. So research has shown that if you want to use effectual principles, typically people that have that expertise or expertise in effectuation are better at applying those. Right now, it might be a little confusing. It's like, I don't know. I mean, should I plan or should I use effectuation? The more you do it, the more you develop expertise, the better you become at using effectual principles, right? So you want to do that deliberately, and learn maybe from your mistakes. That's what develops expertise. I put this graphic of a chess player in here because, chess, becoming a really good chess player has a lot to do with expertise in playing chess. I mean, chess, so meaning chess players, I mean, a world-class chess player is a world-class chess player because that person has played thousands and thousands and thousands of games of chess. And they know that if they come in a specific arrive at a specific situation on the chessboard, they know what to do because they handled that situation before. And it's a little bit the same with effectuation, right? If you have expertise in it, if you have done this multiple times, you get better at doing it because you have encountered this situation before. You now know what to do. Okay, so just leave it at that. Second, and this kind of relates to questions some of you just asked before. And again, this is a little bit like a visual overkill. I know that. But what I just wanted to bring this up because I wanted to make sure that you understand that there's not only causation or planning and effectuation, and actually both, so these are here are our principles, right? Each of our effectuation principle has a similar, has a similar principle in causation, right? So here we call it bird in hand. In causation, it would be goal driven. So these depend on different categories. So I think this is good to understand here. This is how causation works. This is how effectuation works. Second, there's a third thing you can do. And this is what colleagues of mine and I researched a few years ago. There is a third category called absence of strategy, right? Because up until this point, people thought that effectuation is everything but causation, right? If you don't use causation, that's effectuation. And that actually drove Sarah Saraswati crazy. I talked with her about it. It's like, no, it's not. No, so effectuation is a deliberate approach that you use to navigate uncertain environments, right? And again, there's a third category called absence of strategy, right? So, and again, we researched that. Don't want to get into too much detail there, but there is a third category that aligns with these five categories. Just one example, very quick example. Attitude toward unexpected events. We learned in effectuation, it's the lemonade principle, right? You invite the surprise factor. If something goes wrong, you try to make it better next time. The complement here in causation is avoiding surprises. You plan as much as you possibly can so that, please, there are no surprises in the market. Okay, good. But absence of strategy, basically the complement here is dead end. Like, well, that didn't work out. Bummer. I guess that's it. So that's also what some people say, right? So just to make that very clear, this is, I think, the big takeaway from this slide is effectuation is not everything but causation. It's an active, deliberate approach that is different from having no clue. This basically means having no clue. Just do whatever you want to do, right? Lastly, last slide, and I think there was some other comment. I will look into that very quickly. As I said, research shows that organizations use these three approaches, as a matter of fact, approaches concurrently and alternate between those. Okay, depending on how uncertain the situation is, depending on how good you are at these things. Again, and it's also not better to use effectuation. What I don't want to come out of this talk is the notion that starting from now on, let's all use effectuation. No, that's not what I'm saying. Effectuation is really good in highly uncertain market conditions, right? So then, and you can see that in research, right? That companies, once they are faced with high levels of uncertainty, they use effectuation. We're currently researching this. Not very surprising. And actually, that's another big question you can ask yourself. Is it actually better to use effectuation versus causation? Is it more successful? And there's still research to be done here. What we can already see is, not very surprising, that firms that oftentimes follow the no strategy, so the absence of strategy approach, typically have inferior performance, which is not very, very surprising. And that is the end of my slide deck. So I'm super happy to share this with you. I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have. So please feel free to email me. Yeah. So let me just check. So there's more in the chat. I can probably stop sharing. Well, oh no, it was only somebody saying thanks. Okay, so yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking me all these questions. So I hope this was somewhat helpful. Again, reach out to me, connect via LinkedIn. Maybe we see each other soon, next month, in Silicon Valley. Thank you.
Fabian, thank you very much. I knew this topic would be so interesting for the students, as it seems by the questions and the comments. Actually, I can tell how everything that you are researching and working on in the Silicon Valley is helping you with this new approach, because one thing that happens in the Valley is that it seems that only startups happen there, but actually some of those startups are one of the largest companies in the world, started like in a startup. And you never know when they stop being a startup, right? But from Google to Apple to all these companies that started very tiny and now they are huge organizations. They are applying entrepreneurial approach to everything they do. And this is something also you highlighted during the session, which I like it very much, because many of our students work in very large organizations as well. And this is very interesting, how you can apply the mindset and the main abilities and learnings from a startup into organizations that need to be nimble because of how things change so radically and so fast now. And truly very, very, very inspiring. Thank you very much, Fabian. We are looking forward to see you very soon in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, thank you.
And experience more valuable, enriching time with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. And again, happy to answer any follow-up questions. And yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fabian.
Thank you very much, Fabian.
Y a todos vosotros, bueno, muchísimas gracias. Espero que el tema os haya interesado. Como veis, él nos ha proporcionado su dirección de correo, o sea que le podemos escribir en cualquier momento. Le podéis escribir en cualquier momento para cualquier duda o consulta. También nos va a hacer llegar sus diapositivas. Cuando nos lleguen, os las haremos llegar. Y bueno, como siempre, un gusto enorme veros. Llevábamos sin vernos un par de meses. Bueno, pues pronto nos volveremos a ver en otra sesión de Keynote y también en las semanas internacionales que nos podremos ver muy pronto en octubre. Os dejo, Ana Sofía. Me parece que querías hacer algún comentario. Os dejo con Ana Sofía. Nada más. Muchísimas gracias de parte mía, de Fabian. Un abrazo fuerte.